So just again, my name is Maria Ramirez, and thanks to all the wonderful presenters this evening, and thanks for allowing me to be part of this. It's really fun to reconnect with the NSLI-Y community. My presentation is a bit different from everyone else's because it's focused a bit more domestically, but I think it's still very relevant in regards to the skills that you would need to use to be doing this kind of work. And so it's just kind of an alternative for people who might be interested in using our skills that we've learned through NSLI-Y and strengthened, but staying in the US. So just a little bit of background about myself. I participated in NSLI-Y in the summer of 2006 in Cairo, Egypt. So to my knowledge, that was the first program that was offered through NSLI-Y. I think at that time it was even called the Strategic Language Initiative, SLI, and they changed it. But like many of our experiences, is a hugely transformative time for me because it was my first time, getting out of Wisconsin. I'm from Wisconsin, and seeing a different lifestyle culture. And something that I was completely overwhelmed by was the love and the sense of community that I felt there, and the sense of acceptance that I felt from my host family and the other Egyptians that I made friends with. And so upon coming back to the U.S., it was very difficult because I was trying to tell people about my experience, and there was talk of, did you meet any terrorists? I'm surprised you're alive. All these really negative stereotypes coming to head that really surprised me after having such a positive experience in Egypt. So I think realizing at age 18 that there's so much disconnect and stereotypes when it comes to people looking at a culture that's different from their own, has really impacted the way I've lived my life, the career and academic decisions that I've made. And so I'll talk a little bit about that in these next few slides. So just kind of fast forwarding quickly through the next 10 years of my life. I went to I did my undergraduate degree at UW-Madison, where I studied international studies, Middle Eastern studies, but also Spanish. And because of my passion for, cross-cultural affairs, language, the idea of really understanding a culture outside of your own, I became a language teacher, a Spanish teacher, specifically through Teach for America. Got my master's in education while living in DC, but still kind of wanted to go back and finish. I mean, you're never done learning a language, but I guess improve upon the Arabic that I started through NSLI-Y that I studied in college. And so I was able to really combine my passion for teaching and education, and Arabic in the Middle East, in applying for a Fulbright, which took me then to Amman, Jordan for a year, where I was an English teaching assistantship. And so, after coming back to the U.S., then I started a position at a small university back in my home state of Wisconsin called Carroll University, right outside of Milwaukee, as the director of pre-college programs. And so I'll tell you a little bit about that and the kind of service project that we're doing and how it all ties together. So one of the programs that I run is called Project Pioneer. It's a Saturday enrichment program, which brings students from Milwaukee to where our university is located a bit outside of Milwaukee, and allows them to take part in workshops, classes, field trips, a variety of activities that will allow them to understand better what it's like to be a college student, so that once they reach, college, they're more likely to be successful there. And while this is a domestic program, with domestic students, it really, I think, speaks to that idea of bringing different cultures and backgrounds together. Something that we know very well here in Milwaukee is that our city's very segregated. The north side is majority African American, the south side is majority Latino, and the east side is majority white. And so, those ideas, again, I find myself traveling, between or amongst all the areas and hear comments, oh, I can't believe you went to that neighborhood, or did you feel safe? The last time I was there, this is what I saw. And so even though I'm in, my home area, there's still those misunderstandings between cultures that are really pervasive, the same kinds that I experienced coming back from Egypt. And so I think it's really important. We have 35 participants from all different areas of Milwaukee that come together and so are able to kind of explore a culture outside of their own while also really thinking through their identity and how the rest of their community and the U.S. sees them. So I also really wanted to give the students an opportunity to step outside their community in a different way. Because my experience with NSLI-Y was so transformative in that, I really saw how much I didn't know about the rest of the world. I wanted to give the same kind of experience to students and allow them to understand too that they shouldn't feel limited by the neighborhood in which they live or their their community or the way that they look and how people perceive them. And so for our program, which is called, again, Project Pioneer, we focus this year's curriculum on making a change in your community. And so we partnered with a student who, I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth between these slides. We partnered with a student on campus who is from Bosnia. Her family moved to Wisconsin in the 90s as refugees from the Bosnian conflict. And she was working on putting on a fundraising walk for her, for a group of students in her hometown. I believe it's called Kamenica, Bosnia. And so, while we experienced really intense educational inequality, here in the U.S. and Milwaukee, I wanted to show students too that there are people across the world that are dealing with similar challenges, and even though we have our own, we can still reach out and help others. And so the pinnacle of this program for me was allowing the students here from Milwaukee to Skype with the students in Kamenica and seeing them ask questions, who's your favorite soccer player? What kind of food do you like? I remember the students from Bosnia said fried chicken and potatoes, and my students just went, absolutely wild. So it's those small things that allow students to see that, yes, they have challenges, but they're not alone in that. And there are other people on the other side of the world that may seem distant, but are persevering through the same challenges. And I included some of the student feedback here about, I learned that my problems aren't worth complaining about because other people have it worse than I do. I learned to have empathy. And I think, in our current educational climate in terms of, K through 12 education, there's so much talk around standardized tests and, SAT scores, but really it's so important to focus on the whole person and building, a global citizen who's going to interact positively with the world, and go on. And maybe this is the first step for them, for the students to be participating in this walk, but hopefully they'll remember how they were able to, as a young person, use their power to make a small change that had a global impact. And so just to really conclude quickly, I want to say that we don't, you need not travel internationally to have that cross-cultural experience. There's parts of or I would say our entire nation is suffering because we're not reaching out to different communities and using our skills to really bridge these communities.